begin. In the picture I'm about to show you, what would you say these two different blocks appear to be? Different colors, right? I mean, that's obvious. Actually, they're the exact same color. And you just experienced an optical illusion. Optical illusions are something that has fascinated humans for centuries. In 350 BC, Aristotle was already experimenting with the idea of illusions. And now we're sitting here in 2026 AD, still fascinated with them, wondering, how is that possible? This is something you should rightfully be wondering. So let me break it down for you. When your mind sees an optical illusion, it's seeing something that's not quite right. It's missing some information. So your brain automatically wants to fill in that information. Our brains have stored away information in the back of our brains, but occasionally you pick the wrong file, insert it in the missing area, and thus an illusion happens. Now, scientists like to point to this and say that this proves evolution. Now, we'll get to that in a minute, but first, I'm sure you're eager to know what in the world is happening in this illusion. So let me break it down for you. When your mind sees objects, the way it processes it is based on the surrounding and perceived lighting. Notice the contrast between the blocks and their backgrounds. The top block is surrounded by a bright light background, making it seem darker. Similarly, the bottom block is surrounded by a dark background, making it seem lighter. Also, the shadow plays a role. When your brain sees the shadow, it assumes that the bottom block must actually be lighter than it looks, because shadows make things look darker. The American Museum of Natural History, talking about illusions, says, quote, "Why does this happen? Evolution! Survival depends on fast reactions," unquote. Like I said, scientists like to point to illusions and our fooled brains and says this proves there is no creator. I want to show you quite the opposite. God's design is on everything He made. His fingerprints are on all of His creation. We can see that even in illusions. I want to show you how illusions really points to a creator through the three main kinds of illusions. So we'll start with literal illusions, move on to physiological illusions, and finally we'll look into cognitive illusions. So let's get into those literal illusions. In the picture I'm about to show you, you're going to see one of two things. You're going to see either a frog or a horse. Now I know you might be a little stumped at first, so let me help you out. In order to see the frog, its head is here, its mouth, its eyes, its body, and its legs. Now to see the horse, we'll turn things around, and voila! You have a horse's head, the eye, the nostril, the mouth, the ears, and the mane. What is happening in this picture? This is what we call top-down processing. But what is top-down processing? Top-down processing is essentially how we look at things. We look at things based on prior knowledge. What does that mean, though? Well, for example, in this illusion, you probably couldn't distinguish both of them until I told you what you were looking for. Then you were able to build off of that prior knowledge I gave you and distinguish both based on that knowledge. In a world where everything is chaos and by chance, like evolutionists would put it, we wouldn't have this complex way of thinking. So even if I told you that there was indeed a frog and a horse in the picture, you couldn't build off of that information, and you continue to only see one of the animals. Top-down processing is something that had to be placed inside of us by an all-knowing God. Now let's move on to physiological illusions. Now to remember these, you can think of them as excessive stimuli, which you'll see in just a minute why we call it that. And don't forget, you remember literal illusions as hidden objects, because there's many hidden objects in literal illusions. In this physiological illusion, the cubes are obviously moving, right? Though, you guessed it, they're actually not moving. No, I know, this really messed with my head too when I was looking at it. It's crazy. And don't worry, it's not just a hoax. I'll even put my finger in the middle to prove it to you. Because my finger's in the middle and the cubes never touch my finger, this does indeed prove they are indeed stationary. So why on earth is this happening? This is happening because your brain's visual system is overloaded or overstimulated, as we like to call it. Your brain and your eyes take in certain information from the world around us, then it goes down the neural pathway into your brain to then be processed. When something has extreme colors, really bright colors, lots of flashing lights as we see here, it overloads it. Your brain doesn't know what to do with all this information, but it doesn't freak out. When your brain has an overload of information, God designed it so that it will actually revert back to the things it knows to be true about the world. So as you look at this illusion, your brain knows things about objects and movements that it's stored away already, and as it's not sure what to do with all this information, it simply applies the stored away information to this illusion, and thus it looks like it's moving. As we've seen, your brain is overloaded, not sure what to do with all this information, but it didn't give up. It still figured it out, even if it got it wrong. Evolutionists would like to say that our brains are built for survival of the fittest, right? If that were true, why would we have this desire to figure out what's going on if it didn't directly affect our survival? Again, this is something that had to be placed inside of us by an all-knowing God. God tells us in Genesis 1:28 to, quote, "Fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth," unquote. Finally, let's look into cognitive illusions, which you can remember as exploiting pre-existing knowledge. In this picture I'm about to show you, I'm going to say something that, again, may leave you slightly shocked. The two orange circles are obviously different sizes. No, you guessed it, this is another illusion. They're actually the exact same size. I'll even prove it to you by taking them off. If we put them in front of each other, we can see that they're the exact same shape and the exact same size. We'll even swap them around and they still fit perfectly so. So why is your brain interpreting it to see this one as being bigger? Let's look into this. Now we know, obviously, all these things that we've talked about before of our brain processing information with knowledge it already has. This is going to apply very closely also to this illusion. Whether you knew it or not, it takes a series of miracles for you to see the world around us and the way we see it. You actually see two images, one from each eye, and they're only two-dimensional images, despite the 3D world we live in. They're also upside down. So your brain has to combine the two flat images, flip them right side up, and turn them into the 3D world we see. But how does it do this? In order to turn the 2D images into the 3D images we see, your brain has to use constant calculation to get the right depth, distance, color, shading, etc. Like we talked about, we have so much constant information being thrown at us in this world. Your brain has to work extremely quickly. So again, it stores away information that it can use later on to fill in certain gaps. In this illusion, your brain knows that farther away things look smaller. So it sees this circle and sees that the blue circles are smaller than the blue circles on the right. It takes that to mean that this image thus must be farther away. Also, because the two orange circles appear to be the same size on your retina, which is the back of your eye, your brain puts all this information together and interprets it to mean that this orange circle must be bigger. And then that's what you see in the 3D image you're seeing now, a bigger circle on the left, despite what it really is. Judges, next time you see an optical illusion, remember that although our brains occasionally get things wrong, and this is to be expected in an imperfect world, ultimately, illusions don't point to our full brains, but rather show the intelligent design of an amazing creator. Thank you so much.
And your 2026 Expository Western Slave Rendezvous Champion, Kennedy Reed.